Hello and welcome to the podcast Shedding Candlelight on Cryptids, Hauntings, Mythology, and more. If it is weird, we are talking about it. This is your host, Lee Donna, and I hope that you are as glad as I am that we have turned the calendar pages and rolled ourselves right out of the year 2024. It was by far not my favorite. The entire year was one long, giant string of unfortunate events for myself and for my family. And honestly, 2025 is not looking much better right now. We are only about a week in at the time of this recording, and we have already suffered a couple of different heartaches and loss. So, right here at the top of the show, I'm going to promise you that I will not cry today, and I'm going to beg you to send me your joy. I would love to hear about the things going right in your life, and feel free to remind me to count my blessings because they are indeed many. And one day I resolve to be able to reflect on and honor those many blessings. Until then, let's talk about how to summon evil spirits. Before we get into today's episode, though, we do have to talk about the drones over New Jersey. Here are the facts as I know them. Shortly before the drones appeared over New Jersey, I released a podcast episode about the Jersey Devil. In that episode, I revealed to our worldwide audience that a huge portion of the New Jersey Pine Barrens is controlled for all intents and purposes not by one government, but by a collective group of world governments, all involved with NATO. In that episode, I suggested that maybe there are some experiments happening in the Barrens. Furthermore, I went ahead and not only told the people the truth about the Jersey Devil being a wyvern, but I revealed that I had seen one of these creatures. Then, shortly after the episode dropped, drones began to appear in the skies above New Jersey. Some of these drones are reportedly as large as an SUV, and it is being widely reported that those drones are searching for something. The wyvern that I saw would definitely fit inside of an SUV, and it disappeared into a body of water, just like the drones are reportedly doing when they fly back out to sea and vanish without a trace. Make connections where you will. You know, all of the things that we are not discussing here on this show because this is a fun, lighthearted family show. And what my listeners really want to know is how they can call forth the legendary Bloody Mary. To be clear, while I am going to clue us in on what the urban legend is and who Mary might be, I will never be doing this ritual because I am a fraidy cat. And I would prefer it if you would join me in so being, because being afraid of everything will keep you safe. Mostly, which is why Fear Everything should be our 2025 resolution. If I would have adopted such a resolution in years past, it would have kept me from curiously, in part, performing the Bloody Mary ritual. I have said her name at least twice while my hand is on the doorknob, and I am half outside of a dark mirrored room. If you do not know what I am talking about, just hang on. You will understand the folly of my way shortly because I am now convinced that it was this half commitment to the ritual that spawned the curse I am now living under. You cannot half do things unless you want to become an old, gray haired, unfortunate, bitter woman who is probably going to haunt the earth for all eternity, possibly from the inside of a mirror. The legend of Bloody Mary is probably fake, but on the off chance that it is not, and with my personal history of having what we will politely refer to as really bizarre life experiences, I do not trust that actually performing this ritual with some sort of intent to call forth a spirit will not actually work. So, again, I do not think you should test out the urban legend. I am getting ready to explain. That is my final warning. Many of you probably already know what this ritual is, but maybe you do not know the full extent of it because even though I've been aware of it for about as long as I can remember, there was a step my husband brought up that I was not aware of. Strangely, this step is the reason he has not ever done the ritual. He isn't afraid the way that I am, he is only logical. So here we go. According to myth, if you would like to call forth the spirit of Bloody Mary, you must first enter a dark room and stand in front of a mirror, making the bathing chamber a popular choice. Once positioned in front of the mirror and while staring into its dark abyss, you begin to chant, saying her name 3 times.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary.
The third time is only for the brave of heart. No tricking me into saying it 3 times in a row, even in a brightly lit room, because after all of these decades with people calling on her name, Mary has probably figured out how to walk between worlds whenever she wants. No provocation needed. But what happens to the foolhardy amongst us who summon this bloody woman? On the mild side of things, she appears in the mirror drenched in blood and scares the bejesus out of you. You race out of the room, and other than nearly having a heart attack, you are fine. On the slightly worse side of things, Mary could stretch her bloody arms out of the mirror and drag you back inside of it with her, probably to live happily ever after. I mean, the rumors say that she drags you inside and murders you in the same way that she was killed, those ways varying depending on who you think Mary is. But that is mere speculation. No one really knows what happens inside Mirror Land. So, this fate does not necessarily have to be a bad one. Living inside a mirror could be fun. Mary might love you, take care of you. She might treat you as if you are her child. It could just be a bright, warm, fuzzy existence. Therefore, I will not knock it, nor will I try it. But if you go to places like Reddit, you will find stories of people whose friends and family claim their loved one disappeared after summoning Bloody Mary. There are also reports of people racing from bathing rooms with their eyes gouged out or bloody gashes all over them, proving that Mary's spirit is able to slice and dice from the comfort of her own mirror if you get a little too mouthy during the ritual. So just say her name 3 times. That is it. Don't get fancy with the chanting or add a bunch of extra steps because those bloody gashes might be the result of the extra step that my husband and some occasional internet sources claim to be a part of the summoning ritual. These misinformed people believe that one must spin in a circle, usually 3 times. Some believe you quickly spin 3 times before stopping in front of the mirror to call Mary forth. Others say you slowly spin 3 times, saying Mary's name while facing the mirror in each rotation. This is where the ritual is being played a little loose and fast. First off, who knows what a dizzy person is out there summoning? Secondly, when you are dizzy, you fall, which could account for the bloody gashes. When my husband was in grade school, elementary school, or grammar school, whatever you call the single digit aged children's school where you are from, he was with a group of kids in the restroom and they were taking turns doing this ritual. As with all things, it is fun and games until someone gets hurt. One of the boys spun around and fell, cracking his head open. I do not recall if it was on the floor or a sink, but the kid fell and busted his head open, and that is why my husband never participated in the ritual. After he watched what happened to that kid, he opted out and forever steered clear of getting dizzy in dark rooms. Sage advice. Since bathrooms are typically lined with things you can crack your head open on, however, I would like to conjecture that what happened to the little boy was not simply a case of dizziness. Part of Mary's legend says that once you have summoned her, bad luck follows you all the days of your life, with many of those foolhardy people eventually going insane. For these people, there is no escape. Every time they look into a mirror, Mary is there, as if summoning her gives her hauntingly good power to stalk you. Others who have summoned Mary become gravely ill, only to meet their sickly ends within 6 short months of staring into that dark mirror. If that is not enough to make you give up on the dream of performing this clearly bad for your health ritual, if you summon Bloody Mary, you run the risk of her possessing you, body and soul. What that means for you depends on who Mary is and what her true intentions are. So let us dive into the possible origin of the Bloody Mary urban legend. I am going to touch on a few that I do not think are genuine possibilities and one that is a very strong likelihood. First up is a woman named Mary, whose last name I am not even going to bother saying because there is no record of her existence anywhere. Her supposed story reads pretty fanciful because fact is always so much darker than fiction. But basically, this Mary is said to be a witch, and she was eventually burned at the stake after townspeople went looking for missing young girls and encountered this youthful woman living out in a cottage in the woods. It is said that the townspeople believed she was killing the young girls as a means of somehow taking their youthfulness on as her own. Again, it's not really a great or even compelling story. There isn't a lot of detail to it. So it is at the bottom of my list. So therefore, we are going to move on. I just wanted to mention this, Mary, because if you Google Bloody Mary, this probably fictional woman story is going to come up. Next is what I call a group of Marys. These are women named Mary who died in tragic ways. Car accidents, murder, freak accidents. Some of these women were pregnant or had small children. Basically, this is how people localize the urban legend. You can almost always find a dead woman named Mary with a story you can link into the legend. And that is what humans tend to do. However, the legend existed before most of these women died and before most of them were even born. So clearly, they are not the true source. Then there is Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman whose story deserves its very own episode because it is so good. A super bloody, vampiric, true crime historical tale. I want to talk about it so badly, but not today because though Elizabeth's story is bloodier and more deliciously sinister than the one we are getting ready to talk about, her name does not fit. That I am aware of, Elizabeth does not translate into Mary in any language. I looked up Elizabeth's name in native tongues to the area where she lived, and you just cannot get from Elizabeth to Mary. So I think it is presumptuous to believe that you can summon Elizabeth's delightful little soul by chanting the wrong name. In fact, I might be more willing to actually do the ritual using Elizabeth's given name simply because she is not the one attached to the legend. Therefore, her spirits can't hurt me, or it certainly can't get out of a mirror. Of this, I am somewhat moderately sure. Elizabeth Bathory would be a great Bloody Valentine episode, so maybe we will record that one next month. A lot of people hate Valentine's Day, and the opposite of love is murder. And Elizabeth's story might include some women being framed by men, which makes it right up my alley because you guys know I love to give men a hard way to go, which again ties back into the Valentine theme. Sorry, man, I do try to be nice, but alas, I am an old and crotchety woman living under a curse. All right. Our next Bloody Mary candidate is a good one and probably the correct one because she was actually referred to as Bloody Mary during her lifetime. This is Mary Tudor, also known as Queen Mary the First of England. She was also Queen of Ireland and even Spain for a time. Mary was the daughter of King Henry VIII of England. She was his child by his first wife, a wife that Henry decided to divorce in favor of marrying his mistress. If you listened to my Christmas is Canceled episode, you already know that during the time when Henry was married to his first wife, England was under Catholic rule and the Catholics did not allow divorce. So the Pope told Henry no when the king broached the subject of ditching his first wife. Henry, being a king and therefore not inclined to let people tell him what to do, especially when it came to his women, dumped the Pope. Catholicism was then canceled, and Henry invented a brand new Church of England, one that was Protestant instead of Catholic. And Henry further appointed the ruling monarch as the head of the Church of England. So he gave himself not only political rule, but complete religious authority. When Henry died, Mary was 31 years old, but it was Henry's 9-year-old son and Mary's half brother who ascended the throne. Because after Henry divorced Mary's mom, Mary was removed from the line of succession on the grounds that she was no longer his legitimate child. It did not matter that she was born when her parents were still married. Nope. The ruling men decided she was illegitimate and therefore they would pass the throne on to the juvenile male instead of the wise, totally legitimate woman. Typical. Henry VIII beheaded and abused quite a few women, but to be fair, he did restore Mary and one of her half sisters who had also been deemed illegitimate after Henry killed that girl's mother to the line of succession shortly before he died. However, Henry did not remove their label of being illegitimate. So he said, yeah, you can ascend to the throne, but you are still no legitimate child of mine. A point he remained firm on, but only when it came to the female children he bore with previously headed women, because his little son Edward remained legitimate even after his mama lost her head. If you do not know Henry's story, you really should read about it because it is diabolical in many ways. As for his daughter Mary, she played her part and did what she had to do, even during her half brother's reign, when his Protestant advisors, who were basically running England, were calling for her to once again be removed from the line of succession. Their actions and the cruelty that she endured at the hands and whims of her father only fueled Mary's fire. Her father would imprison her at different places, never allowing her to see her mother again, and he would confiscate her belongings, then call her to court to help with goings on there, only to send her away again when she had the tiniest glimmer of hope that he was finally going to start being a decent person. So Mary not only worked to get herself reinstated as the rightful heir of England, but once she got herself placed on the throne as a devout Catholic, she realigned England with the Catholic faith and worked to dismantle the Protestant hold over England that her father and brother had championed. Mary was queen from 1553 until her death in 1558. But during those 5 short years, when Mary was between the ages of 37 and 42, she burned several hundred Protestants at the stake. It was this persecution of the Protestants that earned her the title Bloody Mary. But honestly, the story of Queen Mary I of England is pretty tragic. Many of those she sentenced to being burned alive were Protestants conspiring to once again remove her from the throne. She actually let some of them go or imprisoned them at different locations as she had once been imprisoned, letting their treason not be a death sentence until they eventually tried to overthrow her again, forcing her to take drastic and final actions against them. Mary also married after regaining the English throne and, from all accounts, fell in love with her husband. He, however, didn't really love her. She was a political match, a means to an end. More heartbreakingly, Mary had some false pregnancies or maybe even miscarriages. There is a good deal of speculation about what might have been wrong with her, including that she just outright faked being pregnant. But at the end of the day, she never bore any children, despite seeming to desperately actually want a child, and not only for the purposes of having an heir. As for her being the urban legend Mary, well, Queen Mary is a good candidate, despite the fact that she burned people at the stake, which really is not the bloodiest of methods when it comes to murder. Also, Mary did not have the darkest of intentions when she ordered her opposition to be taken out, even though the method is something we consider barbaric today. It was more commonplace back then. And no, I am not just taking up for her because she is a woman. As a monarch in the time and place that Mary lived, and considering that she was raised by a man who beheaded women once he simply had no more use for them, I think Queen Mary could have turned out a lot worse and certainly more sinister than what she actually was. How she got trapped in a mirror is the perplexing part, but it is possible that she is not trapped in there as much as the mirror is simply a portal through which spirits come and go. In most recorded cultures, you can find some ideas based around people feeling as if when their likeness is copied someplace, a part or even all of their soul is taken into that copy, be it a reflection, a painting, or even a carving, as with the Ibeji dolls that people believe can be carved into a loved one's likeness and then hold their souls alive within the doll once said loved one dies. There are even some old rituals where young women would enter darkened rooms and gaze into mirrors in hopes of seeing visions that would point them to their future husbands. During these divination style rituals, if the women saw something dark, like maybe the Grim Reaper, it was believed that this was a sign from on high that the woman would die before she was ever married. Psychologically, if you stare at anything for too long, it begins to distort. And this would certainly be true when in a dimly lit room staring at your own reflection in a mirror. If you have a dark sort of mind, you might see the Grim Reaper or Bloody Mary. If you have a pure soul, you might see a handsome, blue eyed man with broad shoulders and strong hands. That's my husband who was supposed to record this episode with me, but this life curse keeps messing everything up, which brings me to my personal mirrored tell of woe. And this happened in broad daylight or whatever fluorescent lighting was inside of the store, whose name I cannot remember. The name is not important, though, only the traumatic events that will forever live within me. Many moons ago, I was out doing some clearance shopping when I used to do things in public. And clearance shopping is basically the only shopping that I do. So I was in the store and they had a register in the men's department where you could check out without waiting in the longer lines in front of the store. There was one person in line in front of me, and while she was having her items rung up, I glance across the store, looking around as one does. A couple of yards away stood a woman, presumably upon first glance, perusing the clearance racks as I had just done. The woman looked familiar, but I just could not place her, and this would not have been a big deal, except for the fact that the woman was looking my way as if she too recognized me. Here's the problem with that. I do not have good eyesight. I never have, ever since I was a child. I don't have a good attention span. And I've had these embarrassing moments where I wave at someone thinking that it's X, Y, and Z person, even my husband at times when I'm waving like a silly little fool. And then I only to find out that it is a complete stranger. So um, I tend to just ignore people at this point because I don't want to be put in these uncomfortable situations where somebody thinks that I'm trying to talk to them or get their attention. And I honestly do not want to talk to strangers because most crimes happen from people that you know. So when you talk to a stranger, that person then becomes known to you and you're then at risk. I'm trying to teach my daughter in law this. So their stranger danger is real, and it's real because when you talk to a stranger, you're making them known. Keep that in mind the next time that you decide that you are going to go out in public. Anyway, embarrassing situations persuade me to just ignore everyone and everything to spare myself from making these kind of mistakes. But additionally, I also worked in banking and finance where you have interactions with a lot of people, and I just simply cannot remember everyone. And sometimes the interactions that you had with people in those environments were not the greatest. Maybe there was, a loan not being paid and you had to address that, times when people's vehicles are getting repossessed. Um, just you are there and present at uncomfortable and unfortunate times in their lives. So it makes your interactions awkward. And one would think that those people would not want to speak to me out in public either, but that was not the case. People always seem to want to talk to me and seek me out. I don't know why, but I have tried over the years to perfect my do not speak to me ambiance, but it rarely works. So now I just avoid going into public at all cost. So I am in the store and I see this woman. She sees me and I instantly panic. I can't place her. So I'm looking around trying to find the person that I was shopping with because they might know who this woman is. And they might also really need me in a way that would make it impossible for anyone in the store to speak to me. I wanted to get out of there without having to engage this woman. So once my items were rung up and I was paying, I decided I am going to nip this situation in the bud. All I had to do was give her a little wave, one that said, "Hey, I acknowledge your existence, but sadly, I am in a hurry and I must rush out of the store immediately. No time to chat." That was my solution. Well, unfortunately for me, that day when I waved at this woman who had been standing there staring a hole through me, this woman had the audacity to wave back. It was then that I realized that this woman who was making my heart almost explode out of my chest was my own reflection. And this is why a cashier in a store with mirrored upright posts scattered throughout is still to this day telling the story about the time when a crazy woman began hysterically laughing when she told this crazy woman how much money she saved on her clearance purchases. And with that, I hope my stories bring you some laughter in 2025. And if you have also been traumatized and stalked through random stores by your own reflection, please subscribe to this show. Then send your story to leadonabooks@gmail.com. You can find all of my books, thrillers and otherwise, at leadonabooks.com. They are also available at every major retailer worldwide, but you can best support creatives when you buy directly from them. So I appreciate everyone who has been doing that for this creative, even though I am massively behind in my publishing schedule. Even so, you can join my Patreon for $2 a month and read my entire collection of ebooks. Just go to patreon.com/LeeDonna. I will be adding to and updating the Patreon just as soon as I get a chance. And I am hoping to finish a few manuscripts this year to get myself caught up again. Until then, beware of all reflective surfaces. And I will see you guys next month. Bye.
Immortal monsters.